I'll go ahead and call to order. So this is the Concord Board of Health meeting for Wednesday, March 19th, 2025. We're here at 7:05 p.m. In person and with some participants via Zoom. We have present the full board, which is awesome. So I'm Randy Kring, the chair. Just gonna go around here.
Jim Whalen, board member.
David Rope, board member.
Dottie Bernard, board member.
Portia Katie, board member.
Wonderful. And we have Melanie and Ebony present, and some other members of the public here as well. First order of business on the agenda is approval of the meeting minutes from last month, which were sent out to the board in advance of the meeting. I'll entertain any edits or reviews of the meeting minutes. Otherwise, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
I move to approve them as written.
Excellent. Do I have a second?
Second it.
Great. And all in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Aye. Excellent. So unanimous approval there of the meeting minutes. All right, next agenda item is to appoint our new health inspector, Bethany Yates, as an agent to the board.
And Bethany, are you on?
I am on. Yeah, can you hear me?
All right, thank you. Can you do your camera or no?
I tried to do my camera. Is it working? It's not working on my end, and I don't know why. Can you see me?
Work on your hair a little.
I think it's you're seeing it like a fireplace.
Oh, flip.
Yeah.
I just can't see myself for some reason. I don't know.
I take back what I said about the hair.
All right, this is Bethany Yates. Bethany started with an inspector in this health division in the beginning of February and has taken off the ground running. I am so excited. I think Bethany has exponentially made my life better. So I'm very grateful for her. Bethany comes to us from Framingham. She has 3 years experience working as an inspector in Framingham. Before that, worked in Dedman as an inspector and also as an animal control officer. Bethany knows the food code, knows septic, knows housing like the back of her hand. We haven't done pools and camps yet, but I'm confident she can do that. So I want to, I guess, request that the board officially make her an agent of the Board of Health.
Excellent. Well, welcome, Bethany. With all of that in mind, I'll entertain a motion to appoint Bethany as an agent to the board.
I move to appoint her.
Excellent. Do I have a second?
Second it.
Excellent. And all in favor?
Aye.
Excellent. Unanimous approval there. Welcome, Bethany. Thank you so much. We're happy to have you aboard.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Excellent. All right, next agenda item is the local upgrade approval for 43 White Avenue.
Yep. So 43 White Ave is a parcel on White Pond. It is a septic system we know to be in failure for some time. I think we have someone here from Tamsky to speak. Nathaniel,
Hi,
are you
yes, I'm here. Yep.
Nathaniel's gonna give a presentation and talk about his design. It is a 2-bedroom deed restricted home. It is a very, very tight lot. They are on well water. Their well is at the very edge of the water property. Nathaniel has want to make it clear, propose a septic design that is in compliance with the code pending what we call local upgrade approvals or LUAs. Typically, we approve within reason a certain range. We have pre-approval from the board to approve those ourselves. But given this A was on White Pond, in groundwater conservation with all the work that has happened on White Pond, A wanted to be transparent with the board. And B, I actually want to request that we ask them to do nitrogen reduction. They don't have to, it's not in our local regulation at this time, but my recommendation to the board is that part of the LUA approval is for them to require some nitrogen reduction for their wastewater before it goes into their on-site system.
And just because we're a relatively new board and some members who were not present when the White Pond cyanobacteria issue was prevalent, do you mind just
So
summarizing briefly on, thank
absolutely.
you.
So right when I started, White Pond had been experiencing extensive cyanobacteria bloom. It's cyanobacteria is also known as blue-green algae. It can be blue, green, yellow, different colors, but it also can make a toxin that is an irritant to your skin and is lethal to pets and wildlife. And that causes, because of that irritant, would cause the pond to be closed and large. So prior to my arrival, there had been extensive closure or public beach was closed and recommended residents not swimmable due to safety. Extensive efforts have happened both on private residents, stormwater management, the site at the town beach for just stormwater runoff controls. A lot of work has been done. A lot of work has been done using a technology called the A-Pod. So if you have been to White Pond in the last 3 years, you see this gigantic floating like spider. And that is actually trapping the cyanobacteria and it's being removed. And that has really made a huge difference, right? To the, I think, water quality, the visibility, the usability of the resource for the residents around the pond and the town, right? So knock on wood, we have not in the little bit of my first summer here, concerned, but the last 2 summers have been pretty free and they've been warm and dry and we haven't had that problem. But with that, we want to be very careful with that resource. And, it's hard to point, a lot of times the White Pond Task Force looks for what caused this and how do we fix it? We changed so many things, we can't point to, like, this made the difference. We believe that the A-Pod is making a significant difference. We also believe that many of the other upgrades have also contributed.
It's the bacteria feed off, is it a product of eutrophication?
So yeah, it's
So
part
the
of the,
nitrogen and all of the.
Correct,
all of
but
the
they feed-
algae growth and then the death and then the deoxygenation and all of that.
all of that is part of the life cycle of a pond. They feed off the zooplankton,
Okay. Which
are
feeds off of
of
all the nutrients that go into the
Correct.
water.
And the fish eat the zooplankton or the phyto. So it's a whole like life cycle, but what's happening with the bloom, it's out of balance. Right? And so when you have that large of, there shouldn't be that many cyanobacteria, but White Pond's a kettle pond. It's groundwater fed. There's no inflow out. There's no flow. Right? For a stream, like some ponds and there's no stream. It's just groundwater and then what's there is there. Low in E. coli, we never have to close the beach for E. coli. It's not contaminated. It's a clean water source. But there is something in there, the nutrients, that phosphorus, nitrogen that are
Ergo the nitrogen request.
correct. Now that circles me back to the recommendation to have nitrogen with a proximity, it's less than 75 feet, and the recommendation that when we can, we have nitrogen reduction.
Can I just dial it down into like 4th grade level? So.
Okay, well, I think Nathaniel can do that. better than me.
Okay, sorry.
But yeah,
This was already.
But I'm gonna kind of let him speak, and have his piece, but then we can definitely answer specifics of the question. Do
Just.
you want me to pull it up, Nathaniel, this design?
Yeah, I have it. I actually, if you, I can share my screen. I have the ability to, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, all right, so I'm gonna do that now. Just for the record, by the way. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Nathaniel is an engineer with Stamsky, and we work with him quite a bit on a number of different properties around. Right, Nathaniel?
Oh yes, one of my favorite towns. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. So this is right now on the plan, just the I kind of made this little sketch. We shared it with conservation as well. This is just the existing conditions, so all the subject details are stripped off of it. So this is
Can you
what
make it
40.
a little bigger,
Yep,
Nathaniel?
zooming in, yep.
Thank you.
Yep. So this is what 43 White Pond looks like today. So there is, if you're looking at this, east is on the right. So to the east is the edge of White Pond, which I'm hovering over right now. And then the house, and it's a very small lot, under 5,000 square feet. And then currently the septic system consists of a septic tank and a D-box and a leach pit, which are all kind of in the front of the lot here, closer to White Ave, which is right here on the left. And basically, like, the entire lot is disturbed. It's all within 100 feet of White Pond. Just as some background, we went before the Conservation Commission with the notice of intent for the work. They didn't have any comments or conditions on their end outside of just replanting a tree that we have to take out. And they're just waiting on the results of this meeting to see if there's any changes so that we can just have a final plan that responds to the results of this meeting, and then they can close it out the next meeting. So as far as the work goes with conservation, as it's within the jurisdiction, they don't have any issues with it. So now onto the approved plan. So with a tight, really tight, small lot like this, it's expected that there's going to be waivers needed, and they're detailed on the plan. But just to go through the design and the waivers quickly. So we are replacing the septic tank with one that's sized appropriately. And the leach field, which I'll zoom in a little bit, is going to consist of a Presby system, which is often a favorite during repair projects where there's a lot of constraints on the lot, especially because the Presby has a lot of flexibility. You can take certain reductions in the size and in the separation to the water table, which is a reduction that is allowed by DEP with no need for a waiver from it. You can take the 2-foot reduction to groundwater. It's taken here, even though in some points it's way above that, just because of how the topography of the lot worked up. So where the septic is very oddly uphill from the house, so it has to be pumped up. So there's a pump chamber that's also going to be kind of jammed in there where it fits, and that'll feed to a 9-outlet D-box that'll distribute the effluent to all the Presby lines. Just one thing to note on this plan, we're showing a water service that we thought existed up until I think yesterday. That is an incorrect assumption. It was just based off of looking at old plans and confusion, given the fact that every other house in the neighborhood is connected to the municipal water. But as Melanie stated, this property has a well. It's right around here. I went and located it today. So the setback from the leach field to the well would be 64 feet. So it's more than 50 feet from the well, which is kind of, you don't want to go less than 50 feet when you're doing a repair. Obviously you want to do 100 feet, but it's impossible. The 100-foot radius is outside of the property, but it's more than 50 feet away. And the septic tank is also more than 50 feet away. That's just the base requirement in general anyway. So the waivers are a reduction in the distance to the well for the leach field, which is 64 feet when 100 feet is required. There are several property line setbacks. So the required distance from any component to a property line, so that's the leach field or the tanks, is 10 feet. At the closest point, it's just going to 5 feet. So it's half the setback, which is preferred. So it's not right up against any property line. And then the final Title V waiver is a increase in the maximum allowable cover. So the pump chamber is more than 36 inches below grade. 36 inches is the deepest that you can put a component. During repairs, if you need to, you can increase that distance if you provide a heavy-duty tank, and that's what we're providing. And it's only about a foot over the maximum, so it's about 4 feet deep. The type of tank that's provided, an H20 tank, is designed to withstand that kind of a depth. And then again, I know this was already mentioned by Melanie, but the local waiver that we are seeking approval from is the distance from a waterway or a wetland resource area, as it's worded, to the leach field. So in Concord, 75 feet is required. This is impossible to maintain on a small lot, given that the 75 takes up a huge area where you would locate a septic system. So we're asking for 66 feet. And just worth pointing out. Yep.
Nathan, can you just explain your depth because of the pump chamber and why you're asking for that increased depth? Explain that.
Yes, I can. Yep. So basically, we have to pick up the existing plumbing in the house. So you have to maintain the point where the plumbing leaves the house, where the pipe comes out of the foundation. And basically, when you take that point where the pipe leaves the foundation, you go the minimum required slope, which is 2% on the pipe, and you get to the septic tank, and you've
Gravity out. So we're
Yep.
gravity out, right? That
Yep.
just so you be clear. Okay.
Yep, exactly. And then because you have to go gravity to a septic tank, then you lose a little bit of ground. The way that the tank is situated, it just so happens to work out that it's not too deep. But then when you look at where the leach field is situated in order to maintain a good separation of groundwater, and in order to not be too deep itself, you have to have it uphill from the septic tank. So that means you need to put a pump in. So basically, the only available spot is where the pump is right now, which is right here. And the pump just, again, because it goes gravity up until you get to the pump, so now it goes down even lower. And then it's also, it can't fit the other way. Like, you can't rotate it to get it away from the higher existing grade on this side, because if you're looking at it, this is where the grade is higher. If we rotated it, it would be over the property line. Can't do that. So just because of the existing grade right here, where the grade is, we also don't have the room to cut the grade, because then we would be having not enough cover over part of the leach fields. And also, if we were to make it work, we would have slopes that are steeper than 3 to 1. There's a lot of constraints that you have to bounce back and forth between each other.
And
Some
by
that you can't.
grade, he just means the topography is sloped down towards the pond, right?
Yep.
So that the property is a continuous, there's contour lines that he has on this design that is kind of indicating that the whole property is
Yeah,
downhill.
from the
Pretty
road down to the
significant,
pond,
too.
yeah.
Okay,
It's a pretty
So-
significant slope on that, in that neighborhood,
Yeah, my
correct?
God, yeah, I wouldn't
Yep.
want steps from the icy. When, so it's gravity out to the septic tank and then the
Yep.
pump? It's all
Yep.
gravity to there, and then the pump brings it up to the leaching.
Yes, that's correct. Yep. It brings it up to the D box, which evenly distributes the flow throughout all the lines, because all the lines have to have a certain flow rate that corresponds to the length of the Presby lines. So basically, you do the math out to figure out how many lines that you need to meet the requirements that of the technology. Technology being the leach field, the Presby system, the type of system that it is. So that waiver in particular is something like where the plumbing leaves the house is you kind of not feasible to change, so you have to maintain it. So sometimes it just works out that when you go the minimum that you need to get to the septic tank, because then the septic tank is 10 feet off the house. By the time you get there, there's only so much you can do about the existing grades over there. If we had room to cut it back, we would have to do that to avoid asking for that waiver, but we don't have the room because we're pretty much following the grade. As you go uphill, you're at either minimum cover on one end of the leach field or maximum cover on the other end of the leach field. So the leach field itself is slanted to fit with the grade, and it's slanted just enough to fit. If we had it steeper, we would have to extend the sand, and that would be we don't have the room for it. It would be like running past the tank, and we can't do that. I'm sorry if I'm kind of talking too fast or explaining things too quickly. If you need me to slow down or something like that, just let me know. But so that kind of covers the reason that we have that one. Is there anything else that you want me to explain more, or any other questions?
Is it fair to just synthesize though that the main thing that we're asking for is the nitrogen remediation?
So
Mhm.
he's asking for these local upgrade approvals. Usually we would, and the distances, we would approve that and not come before the board, but it's.
Your recommendation would be.
But my so I do recommend that he has no choice. And
Yep.
they need to have a septic system. There's no chance for sewer there.
Yep.
And
Yep.
our responsibility is to do what we call max feasible compliance.
Yep.
Right? So I believe that Nathaniel has developed a system that is in compliance with the code. He's being very transparent about all the different setbacks and what he needs to do that is not. Essentially, the code says 10 feet setback from property line. Well, he can't fit anything in there with a
Right.
10 feet setback, so it's a very small lot. So he's explaining, like, this is what I need. Basically, an LUA is like a variance.
Mhm, mhm.
So
Okay.
how do you get nitrogen out of the waste, Nathaniel?
His-
So so basically, if that was if that is required and conditional upon receiving the waivers, there's certain technologies that are available. So if you read Title V, they would talk about something like a sand filter that would access something like that. That's like the original technology. These days, there's a lot of alternatives to it. A separate system like a sand filter would again not be something that you could really fit on this lot. Also, usually those are not explored in the instance of a repair. So if you have a repair, you're allowed to kind of repair your system to a point, and you can't expand expand the flow. If you're in a nitrogen sensitive area and you want to build a brand new house, for example, you would either have to have a big enough lot to have a certain loading requirement per acre, or you would use certain technology to get you that target. A favorite technology is what's called a FAST system, a micro-FAST system. It's by a company, the same company that manufactured the Presby, coincidentally. It's basically a unit that sits inside of a tank. I don't know every single in and out of how it works, but basically it provides a higher standard of treatment to the effluent. This again, not something I'm a complete expert in, but there's a lot of chemistry involved in extracting a certain percentage of the nitrogen, and it would bring it down to the standard set by DEP, which is that the effluent would have a maximum loading rate of 19 milligrams per liter of the nitrogen that is deposited into the soil, for lack of a better word. That is the requirement set by DEP for a residential lot. It's different for different types of uses. For commercial, it'd be different. So that's what it would look like. There's different technologies and different approvals available, but the FAST system is the one that's the easiest to implement, because oftentimes you do not need a separate septic tank. You can fit it within the one that you're already planning to design. So
Do you know what the cost of that?
Yeah, I asked that, so what would be the cost of that, Nathaniel?
yeah, so when you add it up, it's this is just a very ballpark estimate that I got, but it's just under about 6,000 for just the unit, and then an extra about 1,200 to deliver it. So, and that's all before taxes, so it's about 7,000. And in addition to that, there is ongoing operation and maintenance. So there's a certain amount of money that it would cost the owner of the system to pay on a yearly basis for someone that is licensed to come and inspect the technology to make sure it's operating and up to to make sure that it's importantly meeting the standard of nitrogen reduction that it's supposed to be meeting. So, especially if you have like something like a big like subdivision, you have to have one of these. That would be a cost that'd be shared by all the residents of the subdivision, for example. Or if an apartment building has one of these, they can split the cost up like that. They'd have to have an ongoing maintenance agreement with somebody to come look at it. So for the reasons of the costs and the fact that there's ongoing maintenance involved, there wouldn't be a passive system like this. I spoke to the owner a lot about this. We had conversations about it. He loves White Pond. He wants to do the right thing. The preference would be to avoid having to use additional technology other than what we've presented. That's just we can discuss it further. That's just the preference up front for the reasons of the fact that this is an improvement as it is, and because of the extra cost and maintenance requirements. But like I said, happy to discuss it. That pretty much, I'll give it back to the board with that.
Not to be, what's the overall scope of cost of this project in general, though? Like on a relative basis?
Every time I get that question, I try to give a ballpark.
So
I mean, you're looking at tens of
30.
thousands.
So basically, a new septic system of this size, and this one might be a little bit more because they run about $30,000.
Okay, so it would be an additional.
But there'll be logistics and probably added cost of this one to get it where it is.
Yes.
There's gonna be some, so that it probably will be more like 35, all said and done. I'm not sure, right?
So the
Usually-
nitrogen adds 20%.
Yes, it does.
Mm.
And Nathaniel is correct in that it does, there is a constant maintenance. So people with an O&M, like every year, there's a cost. You have to pump your septic tank every so often, but that's
Yeah.
relatively low. This would be a pump your septic tank, but also have this service. If there was going to be a new house here, we wouldn't either A, let it be built, or B, we would require this.
It's
And that's in the code.
standard in that neighborhood now.
We could, like, so that is, I reached out to DEP and they said, what do you think about this? Us requiring this for this property? And the guidance was, yes, it's a good idea, but you should put it in your regulation, which it's not. So I'm being transparent. It's like what Nathaniel's proposed is in compliance with the code.
Are
okay?
there any kind of like
Um,
texts or, I'm just.
So we
looking
haven't,
at
this system
credit
is in
that-
failure, so they could apply for abatement loan.
Okay.
So we have up to $30,000 abatement loans for systems that are in failure. That we
Which
have to,
this is.
right, they could get a proof that it's in failure and then we could provide. And then that's paid off over 10 years, so you can
Or
get,
like a lower interest.
it's
rate.
like no interest.
Oh, okay.
So you pay off that loan over
And
a
are
10-year
we
period.
the approval board
Yeah.
for that?
Well, we do, yeah,
Well, like this body, whatever.
the health division does. I mean, you don't
Yeah,
do them as a board per se, but it is part of the Board of Health.
so if there is that incremental cost that we're requiring for the
Correct.
safety of. White
We can't
Swan.
pay for it, but we could, there is a loan opportunity for up to $30,000 that you'd have to pay back, but
Yeah.
it's.
Oh,
Can you talk about, I'm sorry.
No, I just want, obviously I
No.
wanna be sensitive to the.
I understand, like,
Yeah.
it's,
That's helpful.
that is not a, when we looked at this and reviewed it as a team, in all the work that we've done, and we just felt that this was something. A couple of the other septic systems have been able to get outside of the 75 feet. They had a parcel across the street, they had other things. And there's a number of them that are.
So
There's
it's
a
fair-
couple others that are just as bad, that we're aware of, right? And so what do we want to do about them?
Mhm.
Fair to say that other properties with such things as putting the septic across the street have incurred additional costs in order to.
They've had to buy a parcel.
Right, yeah. Yeah.
But I would agree that if we do go this way, then we would need to be consistent with
Yeah,
all
exactly.
parcels with these parameters moving forward to, no.
So my question with that is, if you did something to the rules such that it then covered all the properties equally, they already have existing systems,
You wouldn't change them unless. you-
right, so that's only when their system needs to be upgraded that those new rules would kick in?
We could write it that way. I mean, the Cape came out with this whole thing, they're making everybody have, and it's causing havoc because of the costs over 5 years to upgrade your system, and that's a huge cost. And if your system's working, do you need to fix it? Kind of argument, but we know this isn't working. And it's just a recommendation. I'm not like. I do think that what he's applied is an improvement for what is there, right? I just feel that, there's a better option out there.
And then this is a long-term plan, right? Cause obviously.
If there's something better, if it's better. That can be applied to this scenario, or is it better, but it can't fit into this scenario?
So
In
what
other
do you
words,
mean?
like the
Well, the
size of the
fastest
lot.
he could put in, we know. Nathaniel could design the fast, so nitrogen reduction. Other types of systems, all the options like a sand filter and other options also don't fit. I mean, he's using a
Mhm.
Presby, which gets a reduction in the size of the leach field anyways. Okay, you get a 40% reduction in the total size. There just isn't room to put in.
Well,
you
that's
know.
that's what I'm thinking. So anything that we like say as a board we'd have to make as a standard around the pond, I think would apply. Like this could almost be the prototype house for that if it's the first one in the sequence, because
It has been while Mike and I mean, there's been people that have repaired, but before I was,
repaired to this degree, this is pretty good, I would say. We talking about,
there's one, it was outside the setbacks because they were across the street, so they repaired. I believe it was on the other side of the pond and not as steep.
Melanie, something sticks in my mind about the cause, cyanobacteria bloom, being still not completely fully understood.
Correct.
So to what degree does adding the nitrogen system here, or even to the entire neighborhood, benefit the solution to the problem, if we're not exactly sure what the cause of the problem is in the first place? Great, we have the nitrogen now. What does that contribute to making?
I think
things
there's
better?
pretty
What-
standard science that extra nitrogen added to any
Yeah,
body
it's
of
the
water
fertilizer.
is causing, an imbalance of the system. Is it specific to that? I mean, again, I did state earlier, around White Pond, we have a lot, we did a lot of work. A lot of people have done a lot of work to study, looking for a cause and effect, and we did a lot of different changes at once. So we can't really say this is why the
So
cyanobacteria
pretty
was
sure
here.
that nitrogen contributes. somehow.
Nitrogen, phosphorus, some combination.
And what ballpark would you say the town has spent on? White Pond?
It was mostly independent, so I've been there for 13 years. I live on Dover Street, which is like right the next street over from the pond. And we moved in 13 years ago, and I would say probably about 7 years after we moved in was the first bloom ever. According to the people that had been on the pond for 40, 50 years, they had never seen anything like it, and all of a sudden, boom, here it was. And so I think that after a beach closure and then a second season where it closed, and then it went up to like 3 or 4 seasons where it went from like just a few weeks to like the entire season was closed. So when that happened, I think that kind of prompted the town to take more action. And then on top of that, the beach itself went from private
Town.
to town owned. So now the town has a financial stake in it.
Yeah, and the town has put
Um,
an incredible amount of money in the
and then-
beach site.
Yeah, and then on the site itself,
Like the
upgraded.
stormwater management around
Yeah.
that site.
Yeah.
They've totally improved the whole infrastructure where the beach is. So they've made it
Acceptable,
acceptable
but
to like
there's-
people.
There's stormwater runoff
with
and diversion
disabilities.
down the hill.
Yeah.
If you've ever been down to White
Yeah.
Pond and it's kind of a steep hill, all along there is stormwater diversion, so that's not running down into the pond from the top.
Yeah,
Remember, they were trying to do
So-
something with the fertilizer they're using up in the farm fields
Yeah.
up above it.
there were chickens there before, and I haven't seen the chickens since all this.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, so there's, I mean, there's phosphorus right there, but I mean, it's been studied to the point, there was a woman that came out from University of New Hampshire, was it?
Mhm.
And she lectured, and this was like a big topic, like,
Yeah.
for a couple of years, even with the board, I mean, we were getting.
Is it
monthly
fair to
updates.
say, not to be blunt, obviously I'm concerned about the cost to a resident, but it sounds like the town has invested so much into this space that probably there is a mutual benefit, like offset, like now
Keep
this
the water
area
clean,
is
absolutely.
clean, accessible.
Yeah.
And
So
this
at
particular
first,
property is
It's
so
right
close,
there, that's,
you
yeah.
know, that I think it's reasonable for us as a board to say,
Well, and if it's
we would-
town property, yeah,
we would like the owner to contribute this
Yeah.
right,
extra money.
The swimmable locations in the town are kind of dwindling too, I would say. I mean, Walden Pond has had several. They almost mirror the closures, but not for the same reason.
right, right.
And then there was discussion, I think, when we first discussed this with the board, was that they were going to spend a lot of money to clean which
Warner's
body?
Pond.
Warner's
Warner's, yeah.
Pond, over near where the
prison.
prison site
Yeah.
is. So they were gonna dredge it, they were gonna clean it, they were gonna make it
Right.
totally
Yeah,
swimmable.
is that why there were all those save?
They
Warners?
diverted the funds to White Pond, and then they did all the cleanup, and White Pond was beautiful and pristine to begin with. But what the town did to improve it just made it more appealing for not just a select few, it was like more town-wide now, almost
Yeah.
like a small
Small.
Walden.
Yeah.
You know, like, it was like, it's almost modeled now after Walden, but
Understood,
without the federal control. I think it's
Okay.
federal control of Walden, right?
It's
State.
DCR,
State, okay, I
the state.
thought it was a heritage site.
that's really
Okay.
helpful context.
Yeah,
I guess-
so that's why.
And, yeah, there's a lot up to Warner's Pond deal, plus the cost to do it was like $9 million, so.
Yeah, plus the difference is that,
Yeah.
Walden doesn't, it's a private reservation, there's no homes on it.
Mhm.
So this is unique in the sense that it's almost like there's homes in 50%
Benefiting
of the
from it.
pond. So it's, there's gotta be an onus of responsibility for everybody around
And
the
this is
pond.
right on the pond, right?
This is
Okay.
literally like, you can walk outside and, there's a stairway, like maybe 2 or 3 steps in some of these places, right to the water.
So keeping in mind the time, because we're 40 minutes into the meeting.
Yeah, we have a couple
Yes,
of
and
guests
many
here.
more presentations to go.
Just what you came
Um,
for.
yes, I would entertain a motion to approve this local upgrade approval, but with the condition that there is a nitrogen abatement system incorporated into it.
I said,
I move to approve it with the nitrogen abatement system.
Do I have a second? Okay, and all in favor?
Alright,
Aye.
I'm just wondering too, if we could do something like maybe put this on the agenda again to kind of make like you said, a
Yes,
standard.
we
Yeah.
can work
and
on
we can
a
vote
regular,
that
we
and
can
maybe
work
use
on,
this as the
we can
base.
amend. Our local, we have a local septic regulation that we can amend and work on.
And there's a group of neighbors and stuff that we could be in touch with.
But as an
Be in
association,
conversation with
Yeah.
about that proposed change.
Correct.
So Nathaniel, does that get you what you need for this meeting?
Yes, that's my answer. Yeah, thanks. So it's approved with the condition of implementing the nitrogen. Yep. Okay.
Yes.
Yep. Like I said, it was something the owner was happy to do. So I will let him know, and I'll send updated plans to staff.
Perfect. And if you can share with him also our discussion about making it a new standard for any septic upgrades or repairs in that neighborhood.
Yeah,
And-
I'll let him know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure I'll be happy to hear it. Yeah.
And also the abatement loan
Yeah.
that we do have that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. We try to make our clients aware of those. Yeah, I know a lot of towns do that. So yeah, I will I'll remind them. All right. Thank
Great.
you, everybody. It's nice meeting everyone.
Thank you. Thanks.
All right.
All right, thank you, everyone. So next agenda item is the SCAR presentation.
Right, I'm just gonna pull up my.
What would be best for us?
Can they come up, I don't promise that I'd let them come sit up at the,
Please,
with us
yeah.
Yeah.
during
I
this
can-
presentation.
it's like
Yeah,
we're
well,
here.
You prefer to do that, or you want them here so the
Yeah,
camera can see that? We can all move that
I'll
way.
go there.
Whatever is comfortable and works.
All right.
Um,
Just thinking if anybody from
Sure,
the town is
fine.
watching, they might wanna see
Yeah,
it,
right?
or they can see the slide.
Well, we wrote the slides, so we're good.
Anybody else is listening, like.
Oh, I see. And I'm intrigued by this like camera. Is that where the cameras are? Do you have?
yeah, so it's
fancy.
really tricky because the owl picks up your voice and then puts me, but
Oh.
then you don't inherently look at it, so then you catch yourself like looking.
Your
somewhere
side
else.
profile.
Yeah.
Really flat.
All right. This is, we're ready to go.
Okay, great. So hi, everyone. I'm sorry, we didn't introduce myself, but
nice to meet
hi, I'm Gwen Shipley. Nice to meet you. It's
I am
Megan.
Megan Sinclair. Nice to meet you.
And so the reason we came today is because we have been learning about how some of the rat poisons that use the second generation anticoagulant rodenticides have been used and how they are very common and then move up the food chain. So we thought today that what we would do, if you can hit to the next slide, is that we would just spend a little bit of time just telling us briefly about us and then let you know what we know about SCARs and see if you have questions about that. And then talk about some of the alternatives. And then our goal is to try to get them banned in the state of Massachusetts, but first perhaps in Concord, since this is where we live.
And do you mind just sharing your backgrounds?
Oh, sure. I teach high school biology at Chapel Hill Chauncey Hall School in Waltham and have for years.
I have a varied background, but I come from the world of psychology. I'm a wildlife photographer, working on a field naturalist certification for Mass Audubon, so a whole bunch of different things. But we're both, Concord residents who, care about the environment.
Very much so. And we have a website, saveconcordwildlife.org. So we would love for you to take a look at that. So if you go to the next slide, so first of all, I'm curious, have you heard of SCARs? Is this something new to you? Some of you not. So it stands for second generation anticoagulant rodenticides. So basically, the first generation of these anticoagulants makes the rodent stop clotting their blood. And so then it takes them a little bit of time to die. And the first generation, it happened too quickly. So then they've developed the second generation, which happens a little bit longer, which is from the pest control point of view, good, because then they can not die right at the site, right?
In
But
the walls of your house.
in the walls of your
It will
house.
go outside.
Being specific to
die.
somebody who's had this problem.
I see, yes.
Mm.
So that's why they are very popular. But the downside, if you go to the next slide, is that then these sick rodents are outside and then the predators eat them. And then it bioaccumulates and then eventually we have some deaths in the wildlife population. Also some pets, they have been banned for retail sale because kids were eating them too, and so that is not good, and pets. So you can no longer buy them, but if I hire a pest control company to come in, they can then put those out. And in fact, if you look at the stats, 96% of the if you can hit the first one, 96% of the bait that's put into those traps is SCARs. So that rounds out to over 500,000 pounds a year. And so then the data shows us that in Massachusetts, hundreds of raptors, 100% of red-tailed hawks show eschars in their systems. 82% of dead eagles nationwide show eschars. 98% of fishers. And then we hear about dozens of cats, dogs, and other household pets. So it's not just the wildlife, and then even some humans. It's down significantly since it's been banned for retail sale, but there's still nearly 100 people are exposed annually, almost half of whom are children.
That's a national figure.
That one is Massachusetts, the last one. The only national one there is the Eagles. The rest, these are all Massachusetts.
100 people is in Massachusetts.
Technically, between 2021 and 2023, there were 200 people. So I said 100 annually,
Okay.
but so yes, but yes.
Local.
Now that's exposed. So some of these are not death, right? If you are exposed, you can be given vitamin K, which then is your natural coagulant. And so you can be, saved from it if a human is, or a pet, or for that matter, a wildlife. So but it takes weeks and it's not always successful.
And I remember reading, I did a little research on this.
Oh,
when you
good.
Raised it.
Yeah.
and I think it was,
Arlington.
place, no, not Arlington, what's the Grafton,
Oh, yeah.
Tufts?
Yeah,
up there,
wildlife sanctuary, yeah.
that 70% of the birds that had been exposed showed no health problems.
Fascinating, right? Because it's that bioaccumulation
So they had it in them,
Right.
but showed no ill effect.
until there was too much and then.
Well, unless they ate the next rat or mouse or
Right.
whatever, but in
Yes.
your number,
Uh-huh.
70% of them were, okay.
Fascinating.
Fascinating.
And so.
That was
if we-
raptors, raptors brother.
Raptors broadly, so if we go back,
Okay, sorry.
if you go up, so, the hundreds of raptors, foxes, and coyotes are the deaths.
Deaths.
But you're right, the 100% of red-tailed hawks showed some in their systems, but it sounds like that data was saying that 70% of those are not impacted
So far.
so far. Yep, and then, so anyway, just to get those stats right. Anyway, so it's a problem, right? And it's a problem that people have known about since these came out. I don't even know when they came out. But that being said, they're very, very popular with the pest control companies, and we can see why, right? You don't want the rat dying in your home, etc. But there are some other methods, so we thought we'd briefly go through some of the ways to avoid using eschars and still not have a health problem of too many rodents. Go.
Okay, hi. So there are various solutions to this problem. Eschars are not the only solution to keeping rodents out of your home or your business or whatever it may be. And there are multiple steps that people can take kind of before they even resort to any kinds of poisons. And we are just here to talk a little bit about, what those initial steps might be. So the first step is just excluding these rodents from your home. And that's something a pest control company can work with businesses, they can work with individuals to try to make sure that there aren't, holes in the foundation, that there aren't, pipes or tiny holes. I think what they say that mice can fit through a dime-sized hole.
Your pinky.
And yeah,
then
the
rat is your
rat can
thumb.
fit through a
Right.
thumb, which is wild to think about, but, so you're talking about, trying to really, in some of these old homes, I know it's harder because, we have these rock foundations, but there are ways to start excluding the rodents from the outside in. And you can also monitor rodent activity, so you know where they're coming in, because they're not coming in through every single hole in your
Mhm.
property, but there are ways to see, for instance, with blacklight, you can see these sort of urine trails, which I know doesn't sound glamorous, but it's possible. And also, a lot of people do sometimes use around the foundations some non-toxic repellents. Sometimes you can use fox urine, you can use peppermint spray. It's
Mhm.
not foolproof, but it is another way that you can make, and cayenne pepper actually as well. Rodents do not like spicy things. So there are ways to kind of make your area less appealing to these creatures. Next slide, please. Another way, this is huge, is to starve them. If you have food available, whether that be, a giant dumpster or, you have chickens and there's feed left out, really ensuring that your trash and garbage are securely covered, they're rodent proof. I'm sure you've all seen these big belly trash cans that they have in a lot of cities. Cambridge has them all over the place. I know Concord has a few at Rideout Playground, maybe probably other places
Yeah,
as
yeah, I
well.
see mine.
And you know, these are, you know, somewhat at the beginning, you know, maybe more expensive solutions, but ultimately they save you a lot of money because you're not paying for these long-term contracts with rodent you know, abatement services, but you can start to keep these. Another huge one, I can see it up there, is the bird feeders. I am a bird feeder person, but they really do attract rodents. So maybe not rats necessarily in
Yes.
Concord, rats in Concord.
Yes.
But yeah, I think that, you know,
You know what we're gonna do though?
some
Yeah.
people take them in and out. That's.
You have squirrels and you have red-tailed hawks in
Yeah,
your
yeah.
backyard. Well, I share your
I have,
backyard.
and you
Yes,
have bird
yeah.
feeders too.
But you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna get this like tray you put underneath, and so that all of the waste goes into the tray and not on the ground, so then the chipmunks will come to the ground. Anyway, that's my plan.
My friends made like a little, almost like a little parachute with like,
Oh, cool.
yeah, sort of porous fabric that catches some of that. So you're like, the rats are gonna just climb up with that.
Yeah. If you feed them, they will come.
Yeah.
I have had, some very painful debates between the bird people and the rights to do birds and the rights of a neighbor who does not want the rats in their yard because their neighbor is feeding the bird.
Yeah.
It's a very hard conversation to mitigate.
I would imagine.
I don't end
And
up
if
anyone's
add in
friend.
it-
I don't end up anyone's friend with that conversation. All right, we gotta keep going on this. We gotta, I gave you 15 minutes, so
All right,
chop, chop, yeah.
Okay, so, there are other ways.
Yeah,
Say that again?
I'm just saying we can just go through it.
Okay, raptors. If you don't kill them, they'll eat a lot of these rodents just out of the gate. Snap traps, I know they're not the most glamorous solution, but they work. I will say I had a huge infestation when I lived in Cambridge and we snap trapped our way out of it and there were a lot of traps, but then it worked. Electronic traps, rodent contraceptives. I think there's like some speculation that these are like, okay, they're not perfect, they're not great all the time, but people use them. CO2 traps or dry ice. This is for, gassing essentially burrows. My mom had to do this in Lexington actually very recently, but it worked. And it worked really well actually. So, and then there are, you know, non-poison baits, and there's also baits that are poison that aren't escars, that are not bioaccumulating in the bodies and not moving their way up the food chain. So there are options, and we are not suggesting that people just kind of like let a rodent problem, you know, go unchecked, but we're suggesting thinking about other solutions and how, you know, we can move forward, in a different way. Okay.
All right, so like I said, escars are banned in Massachusetts. That's great. And we, you know, we've been going around.
For
to-
retail sale.
For retail sale, that is true, thank you, for retail, so I can't go to the store and buy an escar. And we've been going to, Concord's awesome, because like, the schools don't use it, right? The municipality, this building doesn't use escars, and all of the people that we've talked to realize that this is not a good choice, and they don't use them. Right, but if I hire a pest management control company, there are no regulations currently for them. They have the ability to use them, and like we know, 96% of those boxes are filled with that. And so our goal is to have that not be the case, right? We would like it to be statewide. I would like it to be worldwide, but we would like it to be statewide. But the first step for that, there is currently a bill in front of, at the State House. It's at the Joint Committee for the Natural Resources and the Environment. But we hear that that takes a long time. So in the meantime, one thing that Concord can do is we can have the town pass a home rule petition. And so for those of you unfamiliar with a home rule petition, as I was a year ago, basically we're asking the state, can we be exempt, and can we ban them just in Concord on private property? And so then what would happen is we would bring an article to town meeting on June 2nd, which is article number 36. And then if that passes by the town meeting, then we petition the state. So Arlington has done this twice already, and the state still hasn't granted it. So the likelihood of this happening is unfortunately lower than we would like, but at the same time, so that's sort of one avenue that we're pursuing. This kind of getting that banned statewide, but then the other avenue is an education campaign, right? We want homeowners, we want restaurants to just, if they have a pest control company, just call them and say, hey, can you not use Escars? And then they say, but we have to use Escars, and you say, no, you don't. And then either talk it out with them or maybe pick a different. pest control
Why do they
company.
say they have to use it?
Because here's why, I asked them that, because it makes their job easier. Because it's really, it's a lot of work to like figure out where they're going and the excluding them and looking at the starving. And also the Escars are really tasty and the rats like to eat them. Whereas some of the other baits like Radex, for example, is a corn gluten based, but they add a lot of salt to it, so that rats don't like it as much. It's nice because when the rat dies, then they get desiccated and they don't smell, but it's not as tasty to the rats.
When I had Concord Pest Control, what's this guy's name? He's an awesome guy.
Oh, I don't
Yeah, I
know.
know
that.
who you mean. I can't remember his name.
Fabulous guy. He came over
Mhm.
and he did the ultraviolet and I had
Yes.
mice, it was mice, it wasn't rats.
Okay,
Let's get more real about what
yeah,
shows up in a lot of people's houses. I ended up spending a couple $1,000s to seal up my house and do everything.
Mhm.
And it took me a week or two to find the next mouse that was inside.
Mm.
You know, they had eaten
Yeah.
through the dishwasher pipes and shit because there was food bits lying under there, which I couldn't control. You
Yeah.
can't keep them out.
Yeah.
It's a way to reduce them, but it's
Yeah.
really expensive and a pain in the ass. So the quick way is bang, they go outside and they're not in the wall of your house.
Yeah,
Cause you don't want them to die there, cause we had that too, and that smells kind of bad.
Yeah.
So that's why.
yes, right, and
in,
that's why.
in 94, I wanna say, I'm gonna throw some rough dates out, but in like
Sure.
90 or 94, somewhere in that time frame, Massachusetts had. A vote on whether, bear baiting,
Mhm.
believe it or not, do you remember the
Oh.
bear baiting
Oh, God.
legislation? And at that point in time, it was obviously, everybody was like, oh, we'll ban bear baiting, it's like,
Right.
you know, it's. Letting dogs chase bears and that type of thing.
Mhm.
The problem is I think they snuck in that legislation, some, trapping laws. And I'm not sure where Massachusetts stands now on trapping wildlife as far as like. What you're talking about, I think that might be one of the driving mechanisms behind using poison bait. You'd have to take a look at that, and I think it was like 90 or
So
90.
you can
Yeah.
trap a rodent inside, so
For little rodent stuff,
But-
the hardware store has a trap it alive thing. We
Yeah.
used the trap it
Right.
alive thing.
To have a heart
And the
traps,
poor
yeah.
fucking chipmunk broke its neck,
Oh.
turning itself around
So-
inside the trap it alive
so
thing, but you
generally
can't.
speaking, rats and mice are. No,
Don't
rats,
fall under that.
they're not considered wildlife, they live off humans, not the white-footed
They're
mouse out in the
invasive.
wood, but they're communal animals, they live off of humans, so
Mhm.
you can trap a rat.
Okay.
Um,
And
with a
certainly-
snap trap, sometimes
Yeah.
in those boxes that you see, it's actually a snap trap in
Yeah.
there, not a poison.
I wasn't sure if that was like
Yeah.
kind of one of the driving mechanisms behind why they would.
Alright, let's
Yeah.
keep, I wanna
Yes.
keep
Yeah.
going
Anyway, so
here.
the point is that in our article is that there is this caveat. Because if there is a health crisis and we find out that these rodents are carrying disease, of course, we need to do whatever we can.
On the
to-
virus.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. So there is a little excerpt, except as allowed by the Board of Health to remediate a public health condition. We realize that possibly we should have written public health nuisance, but that's what we've written.
Well, that's what was my feedback.
Yeah.
I provided some
Melanie,
feedback
yeah.
and in your packet with some definitions of a nuisance, responsibilities of Board of Health. To kind of help inform.
And this has already been submitted, so it's.
It has,
Yeah.
so unfortunately, we cannot change
Yeah.
it. Yep.
But
Certainly, so that's why we brought it to you all, because we wanted you to know about this, that this is coming up, Article 36. And we'd love to hear how we can work with you, because if this does pass, which is, whether or not that's possible, we wanted to make sure that we are partners with you.
And we also wanted to make it very clear that if this passes on June 2nd, if the town votes, so essentially what would happen, the town votes, this gets taken to the select board, then the select board brings it to the state legislature. So there's nothing actually happening or actionable immediately after a passage. This is just to pass this on to the state, who then will bring it to committee. If that happens, sometimes these things stay, floating around for a long time.
The more
But-
communities bring a home rule
Right.
petition.
The more communities
the
that bring
more
home.
pressure there is on the
Yeah.
legislature to turn them back and say, okay.
Yeah.
Let's just
Which
do
is-
this at the state level, which is
Right.
part of it. And the other part of it that we wanted to make very clear is that we're not asking the board or Melanie to do anything in the next few months.
Yeah.
This is gonna be, and I know that everybody's very busy. So this is gonna be kind of a long game thing, but we want to sort of get this, exactly what you're saying, to the state legislator, say, hey, like, we're another town, because we're one of many who are kind of in the process of
Yeah.
submitting these. We are another town who wants to bring this forward, and also, again, no immediate pressure, but, and as Gwen said, we wanna also pair this with an educational component, and part of that will be, Melanie gave us this great one sheet, that somebody made about SCARs that we would love to sort of pass around. Also, we want to give homeowners kind of the language, to speak to their pest control companies about asking for some kind of non-SCAR method to deal with a rodent problem that they might have. I think sometimes it's like, this is what we do and this is what we're doing. But as a homeowner, you have a choice, to say, this is not, we don't want to use these poisons in our home. But yeah, I think that's kind of fundamentally where we stand. And we've seen, we're both, involved in nature. We've seen a lot of these these raptor deaths from eating poisoned rodents. Foxes, coyotes get mange, so if you're seeing them around, it's often because they're eating, rodents that might have SCARs in their system, and it's accumulating in their bodies, and it makes their immune system not work as well as it should. So fundamentally, we're trying to make a healthier environment, for everybody as much as we can, while trying to balance the needs of the community as well.
Thank you for doing it.
Yeah.
Thank
excellent,
you.
yeah.
Thank you.
I
I need my
think it was
bird
fast.
feeder, I guess. Yeah, maybe. Or get one of the slings, right?
We'll just move it onto Randy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
or
Yeah.
your neighbors.
Right.
Right, you can have one of those arms, like a branch.
So I guess for me, the only thing is to not single out the restaurants as the only source of
Yeah.
possible misuse. Any business with a dumpster, any homeowner with a rodent problem may utilize this type of thing, if they hire a private pest control company. And the cleanup and seal up, we used to say in Medford, clean up, seal up, trap up. But some version of that, and that cleanup and the seal up is sometimes the hardest thing to get people motivated to do. So there's a number of different ways that the board, we could update our dumpster regulation that's sitting there and make that something that we revisit as an opportunity to, work on this issue if it's something you wanted to explore.
And we'd be happy to help with that if there's anything that we could do to help with that.
Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks. Good, appreciate it. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you guys very much.
All right, did I successfully miss bedtime?
Wow, I know,
Sorry,
No,
we had a lot,
it's-
This is a long meeting.
we
Yeah.
don't have a lot on our agenda and we seem to go from feast to famine.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Or from famine to
So
feast.
glad
I
you let us
may
come
have
in,
to-
yeah.
Oh, great, thank you.
We'll leave a couple of our business cards
Um,
over there. We have some
Sure.
postcards with albums,
Yeah.
if anybody wants
Oh,
to
great.
take a few.
Yeah,
just
yeah.
For the heck of it.
Yeah, right, should we just?
So
put
those
that
are my
there?
pictures.
Yep, thank
I
you.
know, right, she's a
Thank you.
photographer. Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you guys.
Nice, talk soon.
Yes, totally.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. Maybe we'll
Thank you
talk
very much.
after April 19th.
Yeah.
I would very much appreciate that.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Have a good night.
Got all that, Maura?
Maura and
It
both
should be.
John are both here. Maura has been working very hard and John is our most recent intern. Wave, John. From BU School of Public Health. In here is our needs assessment report that Dottie did hand out at the chair's breakfast.
Thank you.
We have a presentation, I think I'm gonna start and you guys can chime in. Based on the results of this assessment. A community health needs assessment is kind of the standard practice if you're following the public health best practices. How do you decide what your your community needs, you ask them. Maura and I endeavored, we were been asked to spend the opioid settlement monies. We started the, Community Health, Behavioral Health Collaborative as part of that work. But another thing that we asked is like, okay, well, let's ask people, what are their issues, what are their concerns, to help us be informed on what to spend the money on. So the bridge, has asked me a couple of times, have you spent the opioid settlement monies yet? And I say, well, no, because we're working on how to, okay? With both our prevention coordinator that's been hired and now with this work at the needs assessment. Okay,
You wanna share your screen?
oh, I didn't share, oh, sorry. I was doing so well.
Hmm.
And I wasn't sharing. Maura, you're supposed to yell at me.
Hmm.
This one. Okay. So anyways, I can skip that. So we presented, we did a needs assessment. We had 539 residents respond, of which almost over 50% were over 60. And over 70% answered were female. Just for a frame of reference, Town of Concord is 48.9% female. And percentage of people over 65 is about 20% from our 24 census. So we're a little skewed who answered this. But neither of us, we worked hard to get get those 539 people to respond. We asked a lot of people, how healthy do you think you are? And most people answered, we're pretty healthy. Okay, but then we had a lot more detailed questions. And we asked you to tell us some of your concerns. And we asked people, and this number of data shows what they're concerned about. There's concerns about a lot of age-related diseases, heart disease, high blood pressure, somewhat representative of the demographic. Anything to add, Maura? We'll keep going. I'm gonna power through. We asked people about their physical environment, and their bodies. You have concerns about hearing, mobility. So we get some good data on what people are concerned about. We asked them a little bit about, concern for safety in their neighborhood, okay? What they think, bicycles came up, pedestrian came up really high as concerns from the people that answered. We asked them about their environment. People are concerned about air quality. People are concerned about climate change factors. So there's some of the data here. We also asked people about their social concerns, more social emotional questions. People aren't as thinking that there is high and social justice factors, not too much. We asked people, are you prepared for an emergency? Some said yes, a few said no. We asked people, are you financially secure? Most said yes. We asked the specific data then, what are you on? What do you need for help and resources? So we have some good data on what people need and have for resources. We asked people, this is really an interesting question for me, it stands out. What do you think your mental health is? And if we ask you, how is your mental health? People said, our mental health is pretty good. About 10% said, meh, not so much. But the majority said our mental health is good. But if we ask them, are you concerned about you or someone in your household? The data changed a little bit. And we had almost 50% in some case be concerned about their mental health and almost 40% concerned about loneliness and isolation. So we asked the question kind of like, we think you're okay. Yes, I'm great. But if we asked a little bit differently, they told us a little bit more specific. Okay. We add quite a few questions on substance use specifically, because we're again, using that opioid settlement monies. We're trying to be informed with our decision making. In general, people don't smoke, they don't consume cannabis according to the data. They do consume alcohol, and the one data point that stands out as a risk in the alcohol line item, the 5 to 9 drinks per week can be considered excessive consumption based on your definition. So that is like, and we do know down here, there's a few people with, it's not illegal opioids, but misuse of prescription opioids is our opioid use of concern in Concord. We asked you, how concerned are you about these? And a few people said somewhat. Not very many are very concerned, but a few people did say, hey, we are concerned. So that I kind of already summarized. We talked a little bit about overdose. We only had 6 people say yes. So we just add some specific details. We're kind of asked by the state to understand of the people that are overdoing. Did they get access to Narcan? Did they have help? Did they know to call 911? We asked a lot of those type of questions.
The overdosing questions were asked in the context of opioids,
If you answered
not
yes,
alcohol.
correct. These were just the questions,
To
we
clarify that, Melanie, if you want to go back just 2 slides
this
there.
one,
So, right, so this, all of those options in black were select all that apply. So we would know if opioids were involved based on that first selection, whether they check that or not. And then this one slide, yep, the one you were just on, Melanie, there were 8 who answered. And so everything that they selected of those options are shown there on the column on the right.
So for all of those cases, those who needed treatment recovery services successfully accessed them. There was no one who was unable to access among those who reported.
Not
that correct?
necessarily, because you'll see that 4 out of the 8 people selected that. Whereas that was not selected for the others. And granted, we gave the option of, Melanie, if you want to go back one more slide, we gave the option to say whether you could access them, you could not, you want to, but you chose not to. So some people just did not differentiate there.
Sure.
they didn't, we found that when we asked more personal detailed questions, people did not answer.
Answer, yeah.
So some of the questions that we asked, they didn't answer that question. So it didn't give us quite what we were looking for.
Sure.
We asked specific questions on suicide and self-harm. We asked questions about, hoarding disorder or clutter. And we found people to be a little bit concerned with that, which is I guess corresponds to what we know and of folks in the community. We asked questions about access to care, specifically, do you have access? And the majority of people do have access to medical care, not as much dental care. And that would be because of the demographic, kind of like consistent with what we know about seniors. We asked questions about behavioral health specifically. Do you have access to have you used them, and do you have access to them? So these are the questions. Yes, I have them. So 35% of people like yes, and we get professional help. So that's a good number. A few said no, and we don't have, and a few said no, and we didn't resistant, which is also a common theme that we see. But people aren't willing to get the help that they need. Okay. And this you can't read, but it is in the report in detail. asking about like where more detail about what you might need, what your resources are, what you might need to help and what you trying to understand, again, what the needs are of the community. And we asked Phil specifically who do you trust? Where do you want to get your information from? Because this community, people get their information from all kinds of different places. When we were just trying to disseminate this, we obviously missed the majority of adults between the ages of 18 and 60. We had a hard time getting them to answer the survey.
Didn't post this on Instagram, I bet.
We posted on
Really?
social media.
All the socials?
And we posted it through the school, sent it out, we posted it through social media, we posted it on news and notices, we posted it on front of the
I haven't
library.
seen you on TikTok yet,
But
but you did. Okay, good, cool.
So.
We did make a PSA video though.
we made a video, we tried. I mean, I'm not saying we did the right thing, but we did try. Yes.
I saw it. I neglected to fill it out because
So you're officially gonna be fired.
I know.
Yes.
I literally sent it to my husband. I was like, we have to fill this out. But that's a good example of
I-
someone who saw it, had every intention of doing it, slipped my mind. But I will say, I just did, finish the allocations committee interviews and we just did an interview at Elliott House Council on Aging. I don't know if it's helpful, but they, just in terms of the like community assessment stuff for behavioral and mental health, one access barrier that they have noted is that seniors can't get to a lot of the medical services because they're over Route 2 and they can't walk and they can't drive because of aging population.
Mhm.
And one thing that they flagged is that they need funds for paying for Ubers.
Mhm.
I don't know if that's helpful. I said I would bring it to, I was like, I am on the board of health, I will flag it to Melanie.
So
But they are looking for ways to get people to that Baker Ave healthcare facility, cause I guess
Right.
that's a big pain point for that area.
transportation comes up over and over and
Yeah.
over again in a needs assessment.
Yeah.
People have access, they're concerned about transportation. And I'm always like, well, what kind of transportation? Like that's a big, and it is getting to your appointments.
Yeah,
The COA has a van that'll come pick you up
they
and
said
take.
that,
Um,
but I guess Uber now being the like preferred method of getting around if the van is not available. Anyway, point of the matter was, I guess this is like the new thing that the Baker Ave medical community is realizing might be helpful in terms of getting seniors
mhm.
to appointments.
Sometimes with seniors, they don't have the app to call Uber.
Yeah, this was what
So
they.
one
told me. I know-
one of the barriers to that
Mm.
issue is.
What's an app?
You have to have a smartphone, you have to be
Yeah.
articulate with a smartphone, and you have to be willing to connect your finances to an app on a
Yeah.
smartphone and do that without
Fair.
beginning. And so that's another level to that,
Yeah,
because we've had pretty good conversation, but there's more work to be done.
yeah.
Like, cause this is, I keep saying, well, okay, I don't have the budget to send out Uber cards either, like,
No.
so I feel we wanna keep working, and I know Emerson Hospital is aware of that, their needs assessment, and so
Yeah.
we keep trying to figure out what's the solution?
Yeah.
But
I told them, I said, I know that there's an assessment going on for transportation and walkability.
Mhm.
As part of the prison closing. And I said that they should reach out to Simon Cataldo, cause I know he's spearheading that.
Mhm.
Cause that's part of the issue is that there's no crossover, they said, from like where we live to Baker Ave. But anyway. That's
That's
what
good.
Elliott House and those folks over there indicated to the community. They're asking for a grant for that, so.
that would, right, that
From the community.
does keep coming up as a problem that people articulate, but then exactly drilling down to what, if you have a resource available and it doesn't get used.
Yeah.
Like why doesn't, what is really the need?
Yeah.
And understanding that, so that's,
Yeah.
That's one of the questions, so here we go, we're working on, the next step really, and we're already started working on this, is a community health improvement plan. So we are working specifically with the Behavioral Health Collaborative on the mental health and substance use line items. We will also looking for help on some of the other transportation, non-behavioral health, so walkability, like what can we do? What changes can we look for? Who are we partnering with to make those opportunities happen? Did you have anything to add more?
Just that, yes, we do need to engage people and get them invested. And I think we've done a decent job at starting that collaboration among the members of the community that do attend the Concord Behavioral Health Collaborative and work on us with formulating goals and objectives and strategies to meet those objectives for those 3 priority areas: isolation and loneliness, mental health conditions, and substance use. And so we've made some good progress with that so far, but I think perhaps the more difficult piece will be trying to make headway with some of those other non-behavioral health items, especially because the health budget is especially limited, and our capability and staff, as me and Melanie primarily working on this, is also quite limited. So we want to see what we can do to get people invested, get them engaged, and involved in trying to find solutions where we can all work together, and try to make some improvement.
I would like to applaud you guys for a really nice report. And it's very easy to read and kind of get what the highlights are. So very, very well done with that. And obviously a challenge to get community respondents, but excellent report.
Second that, but I have a question.
Yes.
And I have a question, but to what degree do you feel comfortable as a health director knowing what Concord's health needs are based on mostly elderly women telling you what their health needs are?
Well, I mean, the goal was for me to have a better understanding. This is what the results are. I can't sugarcoat that. It is a representative sample statistically, but not 100% representative. It's missing certain
Well, that's what I'm saying.
demographics.
So you have.
I mean, Portia didn't fill it out.
Yeah, well,
Not- I'm not-
we've already slashed her tires. I called the guy.
But like,
I can tell you I'm feeling mostly okay, so.
okay,
No, my question is a more general question. It's not you didn't do everything you could. Maybe it's a question of let's think through what else, and maybe this is a question for John with at the B School of Public Health. To what degree are you comfortable making a health plan for Concord with so many gaps in what you know?
Yeah, what's the other option, I suppose, right?
Yeah, and then what do we do about it? Yeah.
so we also have data from the YRBS. We also have data.
What's that
from
one? Sorry.
The Youth Risk Behavior Survey
Cool,
that
awesome.
the school does every
Yeah.
few years. We have data from Emerson Hospital.
I was gonna say.
Every 3 years, they do a type of a needs assessment. So we do know the transportation,
The community chest did a needs assessment too,
okay,
and same, almost identical.
be good to find that.
Yeah, I
You
can
need-
send it to you. I think it was done in
So what
3
I,
years ago, so.
what I do feel comfortable with is in our community health improvement program, if we do work on the demographic that is 60 above. I feel very confident
Yeah.
in the work that we say we're going to work on the outreach with how to deal with your excess opioids in your house, or we're gonna work, so on alcohol and communicating with the combinations of alcohol and medicines with the seniors. Like, there's certainly pretty confident about that work.
Mhm.
Like, that if we make our improvement program targeted towards the population that answered the survey, we're hitting the representative sample.
And-
We certainly are working on that in our group. And we're building the goals, the plan, the strategy, like, and trying to make them smart. It's just, we have a whole team of doing it. We also have a group of people on the behavioral health collaborative that work with the entire community every day, not just seniors. So we have less quantitative data, but qualitative data from Emily Black about all the people that have overdoses. Who are they? Not their names, but they are using prescription opioid, their misuse of prescription opioids. They don't always seek recovery, right? Because so understanding who those people are, what the needs are.
And two things, anecdotally, the people who have the most medical problems are older. So in that sense, I mean, from working in an emergency department, the majority of patients that I see are older, so an older demographic responding to this is not a bad thing. And then also those who presume, certainly there was, I'm sure some people missed who would have contributed useful information to this, but the people who took the time to respond to the survey were probably those who had the most interest or concern about their health. So in that sense, I would say, there's some anecdotal kind of thought ways around the
No, it's very
limited
productive
demographic
and very
response, yeah.
usable. I'm just, yeah.
It has
I
a
don't mean to be
caveat,
critical
it
at all.
has, I mean, we're being transparent, it has
Yeah.
a caveat in it, this is who representative, it was female and it was older.
Out of curiosity, Moira, when you said that you're operating on a limited budget, have you guys been impacted by the budget cuts that are going on at the town level?
Yes. Did you have your hand up more?
I did. Well, I just wanted to add, if I could, to another piece about what prompted Melanie and I to try to take on the community health needs assessment as a project here too, because Emerson had chosen to do their needs assessment based on the Massachusetts Health Equity Survey, and Concord had less than 30 total participants in that survey. And so we really didn't have great data to pull from that survey for Concord. And so our attempt was to collect a lot more Concord resident responses, which certainly compared to 30, we managed to do pretty well, but absolutely we acknowledge that this is not a truly representative sample, but we, along the way in this process and then in trying to formulate a CHIP, have made a very purposeful effort to be including as many stakeholders as we can, so that the strategies and the objectives that we're working with are ones that align with what these community representatives are seeing in their day-to-day positions working within the community as well.
Yeah, that's terrifically encouraging. And again, I don't mean to be critical at all. I'm
You
just
can be
thinking-
critical all you want,
Well, I
can't
know, but that's not my intent. My intent
know.
was to think strategically about how do we fill in these gaps, but there are other databases, there are people in the community that you're talking to. So as you
Right.
build a plan of what to do, this is only one data point, one set of data.
Well, if we ever do this ever again, you are gonna be in charge of getting. I'm gonna nominate you to get people to answer, men under 60 to answer the survey. Cause I just didn't hit that.
I will tell you, when I did circulate it to a bunch of people, and there is always resistance to sharing health
Health
information to government agencies
So,
on a voluntary basis.
correct,
So-
and some non-quantitative feedback, I told a couple of people that I know live in town, cause I don't live here, so I can't fill it out. I said, did you do my survey? And they said, no, and I said, can I ask you why? Cause we're busting our butts over here, like, why? And the feedback I got is I didn't wanna give that information,
Yeah.
that it could then be gleaned and get back to me. Like they were concerned about the security of our data and how if it could
Yeah.
get put back to their
Like the
computer.
23andMe leaks, like all this stuff has not been.
You know, so they
encouraged.
did not want it, because some of the questions are very personal.
Yeah.
And Concord is, generally speaking, my demographic didn't answer those questions. They just, and a lot of people started it, like, oh, I started it, but I didn't finish it.
I know that one of the applicants for the grant, they're trying to gather health data for men who are undergoing cancer treatment and they cannot get anybody to respond to their health assessments for
Really?
the same reasons,
Yeah,
so,
I believe that.
Yeah, no, I'm not sharing that with you.
yeah.
So then we think, well, are you cancer because are you consumed alcohol? And what are the corresponding factors? What do we need to
Opioid,
focus
I mean,
on?
forget it.
Are we trying to communicate with how we're educating people? What, what do we want we want to help improve the health outcome of men. Well, we don't know any factors because they won't answer any surveys. Really, it's a tough.
And I think it's gonna get worse, unfortunately, because of the political
I was
climate.
gonna say, yeah.
We're also the
Survey
toughest to
recruitment.
advertise to. We're also the toughest demographic to advertise to.
I mean,
Guys are like.
But even
like
people I
you can't-
directly sent it to, they were like, no.
yeah.
There are also other mechanisms, though. Surveys, you're absolutely right. Um, And other broad tools. I don't want to share my information defenses. Unfortunately, the other mechanisms for learning what is on people's minds become more expensive, focus groups and pointed research and so forth.
Right.
But that's what, we're.
We did
we're
not
late
have the-
and we're way down the road, but there are ways to create environments where people are more willing to share.
I know a high risk for suicide is in the construction industry. I have a captive audience that comes in every day for permits, right? I anecdotally add some help. We talk about sunscreen. I asked one of our contractors today as a joke, how can I get you to wear sunscreen? What would I have to do to convince you to wear sunscreen? That's what I asked him.
Mhm.
He said, you can't, I'm not gonna wear sunscreen ever.
Yeah,
I haven't worn it my whole life and I'm not gonna start now.
And in his man voice.
Yeah, and I'm like, like that was just my,
One thing I do know that would, and again, I know we're running over, but I don't know how related it is to our health department, but I do know that the non-walkability of West Concord to Concord is such a pain point. And I do think that there's an opportunity with the prison closing and the rotary reconstruction. I don't know how involved we are, but I do know that the town has to submit a proposal as it relates to the redevelopment of that
Mhm.
land.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, that feels like a low barrier, low cost health matter, especially because it abuts all of the health facilities. So I said to them, being the health folks that we were interviewing for at the Baker Ave area, I said, listen, like, you're a whole community of businesses and healthcare providers, like, you should make your voices heard as it relates to this reorg, because it's state mandated. So anyway, I don't know if we should maybe consider, like, as a board.
Mhm. I was just gonna propose, well, why doesn't the board come up with
Well, that's what I
an ask for that as
Yeah.
part of the Concord,
And this data supports that too, right? Transportation being a major.
Are they an
Right.
organized business community, the medical group over
I
there?
asked them.
I mean, like, I know the head of the Atrius group, she happens to be my doctor, so she's the head of
Okay,
that whole
yeah,
group, but
no,
that's just one.
Atrius is
Yeah,
one.
multiple businesses.
Then
Yeah, right,
there's
right.
Emerson
Is,
Outpatient,
are there, is
Elliott.
there a altogether-ness of
No,
them, of any
no,
kind?
no,
Okay.
but I did, I said to her,
And who to make the ads?
so I think you should ask it to the group that is making the recommendations for the whole site, as a whole committee.
that's what I was gonna
Mhm.
say.
And I think the board, from someone from the, I'm not on the board, right? But that would be where I think your voice, you would be
I think
opportunity.
we
to
should
clarify.
have a,
Are we talking about like what
MCI
Emerson does, like with vans, like if you ever go to Emerson, I commute by Emerson Hospital every morning and
yeah,
There's always a bunch of vans
No,
going back
so
and
the-
forth, or what are we talking
The
about
issue
exactly?
is, so if you go down to where Emerson is, you can actually cross the street at Route 2, right?
Yeah. I take it
When
away.
you get up to where like the primary care doctors are
at
and
Big
the
Red.
outpatient.
Yeah.
There's no way to cross Route 2. There's no crosswalk.
Mhm.
So you're basically, it's not walkable West Concord to Concord once you pass Emerson Hospital. Like that's roughly where it stops.
Coming this way, coming.
Towards
out,
that.
I
Yeah,
don't even ride my bike that way. 'cause
Yeah,
of, the road,
you
yeah.
can.
But so do you see like vans or Ubers or what?
Well, so I asked Elliot, I said, well, when you can't have someone drive, what do you do? She said, well, we've been paying for their Ubers. We've been trying to organize with the Concord Council on Aging to get them vans, but like those are limited and drivers are limited. And she was like, and that's even for people who live really close by, but just cannot cross Route 2 safely. So I think as a board, it does feel like a public health matter.
Yeah.
To have our voices heard as it relates to the transportation and transit design work that's being done at the state level. Particularly because I believe, and I'm trying to remember what the article said, but the Concord Bridge did a piece on it. We are mandated as the town to give our input on the redesign of MCI before it goes out to bid. So I think we should try to have a collective voice in
So that
that.
would be one place to reach out to. I would,
Well, yeah, I think at a minimum, I think we need to talk to Simon Cataldo, as to like how this is happening, but it's becoming clear to me that like, if transportation and walkability is a public health issue at both
Well-
the community chest
Mhm.
and based on your resources, and we have an opportunity to actually do something without a huge budget haul, like if it's just getting our voice out there, if that's the lift, I think that's like a tangible action item that we could at least try to.
the question I have is like, once that, first of all, we don't even know what's going into that site, do we?
No, but,
There's like zero input right now, even the state doesn't have any.
no, but
input on it.
Concord.
It has a
As
whole
a task
committee.
force.
Has-
They're actually the
Committee,
whole
but
task
there's no-
force.
there's
Yeah,
no
the
definitive
no
anything.
committees, there's no definitive anything,
Doesn't seem
but,
like
and
anything
Concord has a
to do with it.
voice in shaping.
No,
all
but
of
the
that.
task force, from what I understand, has a deadline to submit its requests as part of the state sale of the property. And the town of Concord, it's a state issue, it's state property, but the town has to submit to the state what we want as part of the sale, right? And I think at a minimum, obviously the Rotary is gonna be something that I'm sure
I
dealing
think they're
with.
gonna straight.
But I think that we should figure out, I'm sure you know, who's on the task force, where are they at in their submission? When is the property going up for sale? And as part of the design of whatever is gonna get implemented, we want walkability to be part of that design. From a public health perspective, like it just feels like a low hanging fruit.
What about like a river walk? Like area, like,
So
right, cause that's really close and that's gonna go right by, so if you river walk
Exactly.
it, like even if you put like a river walk under the bridge. So you're not, like, it's like tunneled
So
under the.
let me
bridge.
interrupt just because of the time. So
Yeah.
why don't we save this for the
I
next
think,
meeting?
yeah.
So what
like
I
a
can
discussion
do,
topic? Yeah.
right, I will do
Yeah.
a little bit, I know I'm not on that group, but I will communicate to my boss and to the deputy town manager that the Board of Health would like to have say in that, and then I'll find out exactly what that looks like.
That sounds perfect. Excellent. Again, keeping the time in mind, any other discussion on the public health needs assessment? Otherwise, we're halfway through the agenda. The second half should be faster, but I would challenge the group to, let's try to get the meeting done by 9 o'clock, perhaps.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so should we move?
Okay,
Okay, to move on? Yes, okay. So the 250 updates, Melanie.
how much do you wanna know?
None.
Okay,
Um,
I don't have,
Told us about the food trucks on the.
so well, that wasn't on public record and not everybody was here.
What do we need to know? What we value?
Basically, the town is putting on and hosting, a large committee is hosting a significant event on mostly around April 19th to be a host of nationwide host to the shot heard around the world. There'll be a parade
Supposed to be as big as the Macy's Day Parade.
It's gonna be a parade in the
50%.
morning. And there's gonna be extended activities into the afternoon, some version of a block party, some version of, other events that are still kind of being ironed out, okay? There'll be the traditional parade, but then we're having food trucks in Walden Street, they're having on Stowe Street, there's, and just top, let's see if I can do top level real fast. There's a closure map, which was in your packet. Limited access from Friday night on around Saturday. There's hard closures around Concord
Yeah,
Center.
like.
Don't
bring
try
your
to
ID
drive.
If you wanna get off Route 2 to your house.
Like, don't try to leave and come. You're gonna be able to be credentialed. And should have some sort of PSA outreach if you live inside the closure area. Why this isn't showing. This is the parade route, and I included the map in your route of extra of the parade route and the hard closure, so you can look at it, okay? Excess of train, 200 toilets around town for bathrooming that yours truly has been working with. These are the parking locations. You know, what's going on specifically in the afternoon. There is gonna be a drone show that looks like fireworks in the evening. This is the location of the stage and the activities around Monument Square. This is the map. There's a whole website. And you can talk to Captain Goldman. You can ask me. You can ask anybody on the 50th committee. There's a lot of information out there. Any specific questions? How's that?
Excellent.
I can
That was
talk
wonderful.
fast.
Yes.
What's next? You wanna talk
Oh,
about?
sure. Board leadership discussion. So, my term as chair will end with town meeting, which is June 2nd. And so Jim is the next most senior resident of the board, or actually more senior than I am, actually, yes.
Wow, who's counting?
And so, I just wanted to bring up as this is approaching, that, my recommendation be to, and Jim and I have talked a little bit about him becoming the next chair, but obviously wanted to bring it before the board for any discussion.
Go Jim.
Great.
Go for it.
Excellent.
You're the
Thank you
man.
very much.
We'll have to get you like
Yes.
a plaque.
Well, you get to,
Are you more
You're the
senior
next
on the
one.
board or chronologically?
Probably both.
Yeah.
These kids today,
Oh,
right?
yeah. Said the old guy.
the board said, yeah, the board chairman, personship shifts every year. It rotates around in a 2-3 year terms. You would do it at least once. Is the theory, right? And some people, depending on the rolling chain, chairperson, you're gonna get to do it twice. And you get to work more regularly with me, because the board person is whom I have the cell phone to and sets the agenda and gets other updates if we have emergency meeting or whatnot, so.
We've done an excellent job.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, good
Excellent.
work,
And
good
thank you, Jim, for being up for taking the reins, come June.
Yep, so that'll happen post-town meeting. So the tradition is any turnover is post-town meeting. Post-town meeting's postponed this year.
Huh.
Because of the 250th, but, that's the deal with that.
Great. Excellent. Should we move on to the chair and board member reports?
Mhm.
I don't have anything specific to report, anything else from the board members. Dottie was kind enough to attend the chair's breakfast this morning. Anything that stood out to you?
No, people were surprised to hear about the public health involvement in Concord 250, so I'm glad that you mentioned, and I brought that up because I could tell they were, well, I guess Board of Health does have a role, so it was nice to enlighten them.
You're like. You're welcome.
Yes. Great. Excellent. Well, thank you again for attending that. Wonderful. Public health nurse report. Moira. You're muted.
Thank you. So if it is okay with you all, I was just gonna share one diagram or graph from mass.gov. And this is my report, but here is the diagram. Is that visible now?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to highlight because last month and for this past February month, we certainly did have higher numbers for influenza. And I'm sure Dr. Kring, you have seen quite a bit of that in your ER visits. But I just wanted to show that though this was a year with significant flu activity for several weeks in a row. We are nationally and now in Massachusetts as well, coming down from that peak, and that is visible on this map here. So otherwise, the report is pretty simple for last month for communicable disease. In terms of influenza cases, there were 78. That was compared to 72 in January and 20 in December. And Lyme disease, 1 case, COVID-19, 16. There were, 1 probable and 1 suspect Shiga toxin producing organism case. STEC is basically Shiga toxin producing E. coli. E. coli lives in the bowel of people and animals normally, and most of the time this is harmless, but some kinds can cause disease by making a toxin called Shiga toxin, causing stomach cramps, diarrhea as the most common symptoms. And most often they go away on their own, but it must be swallowed to cause infection. These 2 cases were involved in a trip outside of the US, and it was deemed that the exposure happened with water exposure in that out-of-country trip. And then 2 cases of tuberculosis, as has been the case with reports. Typically, these were TB infection, not TB disease, latent tuberculosis infection, and neither of these technically met the criteria for my follow-up. So that is all I have for you. The community health needs assessment update was all that we were focusing on for that community outreach and education for this report.
Great,
Thank you.
thank you, Moira. All right, Public Health Director report.
Absolutely. So outside of the 250th and a needs assessment, it is going to be hosted 2 trainings for camp directors. This last couple weeks, recreational camps, pools, beaches are all, and food establishment permits are all due for renewal. So we're going to be, it's permitting and working on that, our regular routine stuff. Community clinician, we signed the contract with Elliott, the town manager signed that. So we are working to promote and utilize this resources. This is a mental health clinician for Concord residents that could be free of charge or with insurance if you had it, but it is available. So that came out of our behavioral health collaborative and asked, we're meeting with the schools tomorrow to set up referral process and get that going. We have had a cosmetic tattoo artist apply for establishment and a practitioner license. And I'm working regularly with the representatives from BME for the Office of Local and Regional Health service delivery assessment. So I mentioned last time that the state is doing a big assessment on our budget and then what we do and town by town, and that will be a big report that will be big news about what we're doing in public health and what the state would like us to be and where they'd like us to be. Okay, any specific questions for me?
Do you think it's important for us to know, albeit the hour and everything, what your budget constraints that you're looking toward are? Or if it's politically appropriate for you to share them?
I was
with the board in a
asked
public
to
meeting?
not comment on
Correct.
them.
Respected. Well, for me,
To have to not bring it to my board and not make it that it is the town manager's budget and it is presented as the FinCom's request. That's all I can say about that.
Is it presented at town meeting?
It has been presented by FinCom to the select board.
Got it.
Whether or not they'll talk in detail about what health, it was presented to the select board. If you looked at the budget, how much we were cut, if you looked at it.
That's a total number.
Oh, no, they called out, the presentation that I saw called
Had
out,
Specific programs.
yeah, but it
Okay.
didn't get into like the whole budget line item, but you could see what they've made cuts and what they, by percentages and positions that were cut in this whole department, we didn't lose a person.
That's in the FinCom.
It was in here, a presentation to the select board from FinCom by, it was part of the.
But that's not publicly available.
It's not?
That, no, I'm asking.
So-
I believe it was presented, Anthony presented to the select board, I believe it is.
Yeah, I was there for that. Yeah, sorry.
And you saw, there was a presentation about.
Yeah, the whole presentation with it. yeah.
Is it available online though, or was it just
Yeah,
that
that's what-
presentation? There were no.
I'm gonna say it was
defined-
pretty official, like, I feel like they would be definitely in the minutes and.
It was part of the
Yeah,
packet, I think,
yeah.
I'm sure, but and it does spell out like each department, like each division, like what our budget cut was, it does say
It
that.
was like a 5 hour long meeting. Yeah, it was a long meeting.
Wow.
So they're, I mean, essentially, they're at 2.8% guidance. If you're gonna pay everybody a 2% step raise, there isn't a lot of money left over to do anything, anywhere. Right?
Question withdrawn. Thank you. Respectfully.
Someone else is tired.
Is
of
there,
getting
with
slashed
the
if
state
you're not
review of
careful.
things, when is that, the?
So
Yeah.
the financial part, I
Yeah.
reported on the budget already, that part's
Well,
done,
they can
and
try
then
to
I
over
started
flats today.
working on, and that's due April 18th.
Oh, right,
Ugh,
got
I
it.
couldn't postpone it.
Yeah.
I was like, really, let's do April 18th. So I'm trying to get that done in the next couple of weeks and I should, you know, start, just ask you, what are you doing for child maternal health? What are you doing for a needs assessment? What do you, like, who does it? Do you have capacity? Do you have time? Do you have money? Do you have training? On every aspect of public health based on the essential services of public health.
And is there any state funding that comes to our health division, or is it all town?
So we don't receive state funding, we have our public health excellence grant. So they're not really, they're basically right now, they're asking us, what do you do?
Mhm.
And what are you capable of? What do you have time? Do you have money? Like
Mhm.
um,
They're doing a needs assessment.
they're basically
Okay.
doing, and they're calling it the service delivery as tool, but it's really an assessment. And some things that we don't do in this department, maybe other departments do, or Emerson Hospital does, or,
Mhm.
And some things we've done minimally and some things we do a lot of. They're not telling me what the goal is.
Hmm.
There's a lot of hypothesis and like gesturing, just like conjecture about what the state is really gonna ask us to do. Are they gonna try to use more regional funds? Are they gonna try to, like, I doubt they're gonna give the town of Concord money to do X.
Yeah, the state's in a budget short.
Sure.
So I don't know, they've budgeted for Safe 2.0 or, and gonna have a lot of people working at the state level to provide training, to provide this assessment. What they do next with it,
Who knows? Sure,
I can't, and they're not telling me,
Yeah. gotcha.
you know,
But I don't think it'll be more money.
Right. Yeah, got it.
my mantra has been to do with what we can every day, do the best we can,
Indeed.
You're doing
Yeah.
great.
Yes.
so.
And you know what? You're celebrating the 250th, yeah.
I'm celebrating the 250th.
Yes.
We're gonna sell and try my best to listen, to your point, listen to the people. I mean, that's why I'm here, to serve the people. So we're trying to, but you guys are eyes and ears too, like,
Right.
that's why you're on this board.
Sure.
I don't know what else I can do.
Well, thank you.
Yes.
You do.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So we'll just round out the meeting with any public comment. I don't see any members of the public present. So thank you all for your attention at this meeting and getting through a long one. And I apologize for cutting things off, but I think, trying to move things along as it were, and we'll re-engage some of the discussion at the next meeting. We'll get that on the agenda. So excellent.
Excellent.
All right, so
Yeah, the
I'll,
only
mhm.
question I have, if we do wanna reach, sorry,
Oh.
we concluded the meeting,
Sure.
conclude the meeting.
yeah, I mean. you can
No,
go
I
ahead.
just
Yeah.
wanted to, I know that there is like a deadline for the task force submission, so,
On my
I'm happy to,
immediate to-do,
okay, awesome.
and
But that's
if
a-
I have
that's a
an
great idea,
ask,
support
I
it,
can
yeah.
email the whole board out a thing. We can't discuss in forum, you can email me back
Yeah.
individually.
Yep, perfect, thank you.
So with that, I would entertain a movement to adjourn the meeting.
Unmoved. Oh, man, I never get the move.
That sounds like a second to me,
Yeah.
so all in favor?
All right.
Aye, and with that, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.